Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing Supacell, and today we are on episode 5, titled Rodney. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler. Please check it out before continuing to listen to the rest of this episode. Okay, Sarah, kick us off with a summary for episode 5.
When Spud ends up in the hospital, Rodney has a change of heart. Michael decides to tell Dion everything, but first, he has to find the others.
Yes, okay. Well, let's start off in TVNS tradition with our episode titles of choice for episode 5. What is yours?
Mine is Crisis.
Oh, that is a good one. I would click that episode. That's
right?
And it's quite accurate. There's a lot happening in this one. My episode title is Electric.
Ah, yes. There is some electricity in this. Some sparks fly in this episode. Solid.
Okay. We are at the penultimate episode of this series. This is the last one before the finale. A lot happens. Tell me your thoughts.
A lot happens. Holy moly. There's a lot going on in this episode. And there's still a lot that hasn't happened in this episode. So I'm very curious to see how everything is going to wrap up. But this episode, just like all the other ones so far in this show, it really is electric. You know, like it draws you in from the beginning. We picked up right where the previous episode left off. And we were wondering, you know, how is this interaction going to go between these heroes? And they noped out of there really, really quick. And we got to see their powers. It was really cool. But then they split up. And so it's continuing this progression of they have their own lives and their own things to deal with. And they're not trying to team up to be a merry band of superheroes. And so then it's really satisfying to kind of see how they get to the point in the end where Sabrina, along with Rod and Michael, show up to help Taser, because they haven't been there for this whole season so far. And something happened where they were like, oh, okay, no, we need to actually help each other. So it's kind of fascinating how that opening scene and them showing their powers but leaving provides an interesting contrast to where they get by the end of the episode. And we can kind of see how little things have changed their minds over the course of really this episode to get them to want to team up. So just, it starts off with a bang. You go on such a fun journey with these characters. You learn so much about all of them. And then the end is so strong. And you just can't wait to watch the next episode because you have to see what happens next. And I've just been consistently impressed with this show in its ability to have all of those setups and payoffs and to have these cliffhangers that feel like we made progress in the episode, and yet there's still so much more outstanding, so we have to keep watching. The show has been consistently great at doing that, and does it again in this episode.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I loved this episode. The opening fake out where we have been waiting for this whole season to see how they're going to team up. And it feels like this might be the moment. And we get instead this really cool scene with the bullets. Oh my gosh. I loved just the way that was shot and how you get to see each of them use their powers in these brief little moments to dodge that bullet. And then they're out of there. They all just run along, you know? And I think that was so cool because we were talking about the end of our previous review, talking about episode 4, like, okay, how are they going to have this conversation. Will they team up? Will they not? Is there going to be conflict? And I love that like no one says anything. There was no conversation at all because we are in the heat of this intense moment, and they all have different motivations for being there and goals for being there that like really you think back to it and you're like, well, of course they wouldn't have this conversation because Taser's there to take out Craze. Shar and Sabrina are there to find Craze and make sure that he's okay. Andre's there to steal the safe, and Rodney's there to save his friend. Like they've got, like you mentioned, their own personal goals and objectives. So they're not going to be interested in like, oh my gosh, you have powers too. Let's discuss. Like, no, we need to go. And I think what's also cool is when they're there, time is of the essence because so much is happening of people like leaving. The sirens are blaring when the police is coming. Like there's literally no time to flesh this out. And so I love this opening scene. And then of course we go on a whole journey throughout the rest of the episode. But just such a strong opening and such a fake out of something that we were waiting for. But the show's like, no, actually it makes sense that they wouldn't do this yet. And we as viewers are kind of fully satiated in that as well. Like, okay, yes, I understand. And we will continue to wait and watch to see how they're gonna all come together. And I love how much the show is really making us earn the moment and the satisfaction of them teaming up.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that makes it so much more fun too. And I love that the show keeps giving us like starts and stops of it too. And we'll see like, you know, Michael will find a friend and we're like, oh yes, this is the start of the team up. And then the friend is like, nah, dude, I'm uninterested. And we've just seen that so many times. And I think then that when we see Sabrina with Rodney and Michael at the end of this episode makes it so much more satisfying because like, oh, okay, no, here we are. Like when everything's really on the line and there are serious stakes, then they do show up. So I'm very excited to see what happens next though, because they haven't formed, I would say, a team, but it's more like, oh, there's immediate danger. Let's see if we can help somebody. So I'm curious to see if that is kind of the tenor of the last episode, or if it's more like, oh no, like we're in this together kind of vibe. So we'll see. But yeah, I loved that opening scene as well. And I also love that little scene is also used to give us a little bit more information into this evil, shadowy organization, bureaucracy thing that we're fighting, that we're really not sure what it is, or you know, there's not like clear edges to it. It's not clearly defined, but we know that it exists and we know that it's doing evil. And we learn that they are aware of these 4 individuals and they're all being tracked. And I love how that sets up additional stakes for this entire episode, because as Rodney is finding Michael and then they together are trying to find Andre and then eventually go to Sabrina, like we understand that by hanging out with Rodney, they are all in danger because this organization is following Rodney. And so I loved how that opening scene really set up the stakes for just the remainder of the episode.
Yeah, and I continue to love that our foe isn't clearly defined. I think that, you know, by episode 5 of the 6-episode series, you would have expected that we might know a little bit more about this shadowy organization. And I love, like what you mentioned, that the edges are still so undefined. I think it makes it far more thrilling and they seem more menacing because we don't know what even this team is up against. And somehow it doesn't feel like there's all these questions that are unanswered and like we don't know who are fighting, and so there's lack of clarity. If anything, it feels like I'm just as much invested in these characters because I don't know what could come after them at any moment. And like you mentioned, we now know that they're being tracked. And so we are also waiting to see and are holding our breath for when those hooded figures will show up and will engage with them, because that one shot that the shadowy organization has where they're following Rodney, and we see them watching Rodney and Michael, and then some dude, some white dude in the shadowy organization is asked, should we engage? Should we send someone? And he says no. So we know that they have the capability to. And they finally do when it comes to Andre and Taser. But we don't know much more beyond that. But I think it makes like every scene feel more tense because like at any moment they could send an agent to come and bring him in. And so waiting to see when that happens, when they will send someone to engage, I think adds another layer of like tension and thrill to every scene because I am holding my breath to see when someone will show up that the characters least expect, and I also least expect.
Yeah, in that conversation with Rodney and Michael while they're like chilling outside of Andre's place, uh, I just kept looking at the people in the background because you can
Yeah.
kind of hear some of their conversations, and we know from the shady organization that people are following them. And so I was like, oh my gosh, could these people who are in the vicinity of Rod and Michael be agents? Like, who can we trust anybody? What's going on? So I love how that section was all edited together to create that tension and make us really feel the danger that these two are in, even though they don't fully understand the danger that they're in. And I think that that's such a brilliant way to create tension. Is it's that whole Hitchcock principle is you don't show the character the bomb, you show the audience the bomb, and then we're worried about the character. And that's what this episode is doing with those two and how this shady organization kind of comes into play.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's also neat is that there's clearly evidence that the shady organization also doesn't have all the information, which is really fun. You know, like they are not all knowing and it feels inevitable, and we're waiting for them to um, engage at any moment because they know everything. There's clearly evidence that through the conversations that they have where they don't know who's on the other line of that phone call. They don't know where Andre is. They don't know where Taser is. And we see eventually that somehow they do find them, but I think it's fun to also wonder like how much information does this organization have, and what, as they're making progress, how does that put our main characters that we are invested in at even more danger? But it's neat that this organization isn't all knowing because I think it adds another layer of like competing progress. Like we were seeing our characters make progress, but we're also like trying to hope that they make more progress faster than this shady organization makes progress, which just feels like a fun little race around the information gathering and then how they choose to make choices um, to further their competing goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm still curious. Do we know if the hooded figures are working for the shady organization? Because
We
I'm
don't
not
know actually.
sure.
Yeah.
Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I do. I don't know, and they might be like different branches of the same evil conglomerate. We don't know, but I think that that's another kind of fun piece about this is that we can see like the bureaucratic side. We've seen the surveillance. We've seen the evil science stuff that's being done, and then we have the hooded figures who may or may not be connected. And I think that that also adds some fun tension because we don't know who our villains are. We don't know if there's only like one big one with a bunch of minions attached to it, or if there are
Mm-hmm.
multiple villain organizations all coming after our heroes. And I think that makes things more exciting because you don't know who's going to come at you and what tactic they're going to use, which makes things just more tense. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a really good point because I was wondering why the organization seems to not know where Andre and Taser is, but then later we see that the hooded figures show up for both of them. So in my head canon, I basically was like, okay, well they figured out eventually where Andre and where Taser were, but it would also be plausible that they still don't know where those two are, and these hooded figures are working for somebody else, and they are not necessarily part of the government organization because that would make that would make sense for then why they found Andre, they found Taser, but the government shadowy organization hasn't yet, because there's that conversation earlier where they still don't know where a lot of these people are. They're only following Rodney. They don't know where the others are. Or guys, now they know where Rodney and Michael are, but they don't necessarily know where everybody else is yet.
Mm-hmm. And then my other thought that maybe it probably doesn't make sense, but the symmetry in that first episode of 5 hooded figures and then 5 heroes, like I haven't been able to like let that go. And when in a whatever previous episode it was where Rodney encountered one with a mask, that person controlled electricity and I think it was fire too, right? And we had seen in the first episode in the future Rodney being able to control electricity. And then in this episode, Andre fights someone with super strength, though the person he's fighting is bigger than him. But there's like a weird symmetry between them that I haven't been able to let go of, but it's not exactly the same. So I don't know. I'm also wondering if there's something there of them like fighting, like maybe like an alternate version of themselves or something. I don't know.
Self.
Yeah, something like that. Just because I don't know, the symmetry is just it's stuck in my brain and I can't let it go. So I'm very curious to see what else we learn about these hooded figures, because I don't know, there's some interesting choices being made there that my brain wants to connect that may or may not actually connect.
I see your puzzling brain working, and it is on to something. I love it. That is actually really cool. I just need to put you and Dion together in a room, and y'all are going to just figure this whole thing out for us.
We will solve this puzzle. Don't you worry. We can do it. I believe in us.
That is a great observation, though. Yeah, because it is fascinating, the symmetry that exists. 5 hooded figures, 5 heroes, and their powers, like you've observed, are quite aligned for the ones specifically that they're fighting against too. It's not like Andre's fighting, the one with the electricity, and it's not like Rodney's fighting the one with super strength. Like they're truly fighting the ones that have similar powers to themselves, which maybe there's some like Jungian theory here around your shadow self and fighting your own demons, or fighting your, alternate evil version of yourself to then reach some kind of, I don't know, something greater meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. That
would be cool.
Yeah, that would be so fun. And I like the idea that we're bringing in some like psychology into this. Sure. Yeah, let's go. We got all kinds of stuff in this show. Great.
That is fascinating. That's fascinating. And what's also interesting is that the hooded figures are always slightly better than they are right now from what we've seen, And so I'm like, well, this is great training ground for their powers to get better, or for them to like improve in their fighting abilities to fight against someone like themselves, but better. Like how does that like maybe draw out some of their powers in a more interesting way? It's almost like you're getting trained up, So I don't know. That might be some like alternate goal that somebody has for them to get more and more powerful. My brain's going in a different direction with this, which is basically like, what if the hooded figures aren't necessarily evil, but they're getting taken in for training? I don't know. That could be.
Hey, I like it.
They're clearly evil, but maybe not.
Yes.
Maybe that's a like fake out for us too.
Because like, I don't think we've seen the people in the masks do anything. The dude threw, I think, a fireball at Rodney, and like Andre's super strong guy like broke his hand or something. Like we haven't seen the hooded figures do evil in society, which is just making me wonder what is going on here, and like I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be way off in left field, but that's just something that I keep thinking about while watching is I think
Hmm.
that there's something more going on with these hooded figures, and I think that that could be a good setup for like a fun plot twist reveal moment in the finale if the show wants to go there. But this show has also been so good at like zigging when I expect it to zag. So we'll see
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it goes in the direction that I'm thinking it might want to go in, or if it just goes in a completely opposite direction, which is what is making this show so exciting, is that I keep expecting it to do something and then it does the other thing and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, that's so much more fun. Let's go down this path." So, we'll see.
Hmm. It's really playing with our expectations, and I think that's why we can conjecture together now and have all of these like crazy theories, because the show is inviting us to, like every time we think that we understand, it goes somewhere, like you said, it zags in another direction. So then we're like, ooh, where are all of the ways that the show could zag? Because you're right, we haven't seen the hooded figures in society inherently do anything bad yet. um, and their connection with the shadowy organization, like we mentioned, may not be connected at all. It seems like their primary goal is to like bring the heroes in, wherever
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
is, because we, at the end of this episode, they don't kill Taser. Like they intentionally, they take him out, they knock him out, but they don't kill him, and they're just dragging him back through the shiny circle, blue circle, and then for some purpose that we don't really understand yet. So they're just trying to take them in somewhere. We don't know where. And I think that cognitive connection point between seeing how this shadowy organization is wanting to take them in, like inherently makes us form a connection between the hooded figures and the shadowy organization. But like we talked about, they might not be connected. The hooded figures might be taking them in somewhere else for some other purpose. um, but our brains are putting two and two together, even though those two things may not be related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because of that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the perfect setup for a fun plot twist because
Mm-hmm.
our brains naturally want to associate, oh, these two things are the foes of our heroes, so then they must be connected, which
Right.
they may or may not be. So we're going to find out maybe in the next episode, I hope, all the
Yeah.
answers to our questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
or at least
Yeah.
some answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We shall see. Okay. What are other big things that stood out to you in this episode of what happens?
Oh my goodness, there is
So much,
so much.
you know.
Um, oh, Dion, our
Mm.
resident researcher, uncovers some good stuff in this episode. She meets again with the family of Jasmine, who isn't missing, she's been taken. And we learn about Jasmine's power, which is to heal, and how she healed
Yeah.
her dad of sickle cell. So, again, bringing up this connection between sickle cell and our powered friends. The show keeps bringing it up, and I think that that's so significant. And I'm curious if that is just a way to raise awareness for us as the audience about sickle cell, or I guess it could be an and or is it is there a deeper connection that the show is going to flesh out in the next episode? But I loved that Dion is continuing to dig. She's continuing to learn more. Um, and it just increases the stakes too, because throughout this episode, Michael wants to come clean to her and he wants to tell her what's going on and he wants to tell her that she is in danger by doing all of this. But he keeps getting interrupted and is honestly just not making the time to have a hard conversation. So every time we see Dion going down this path, it's just increasing the tension and the stakes. And so it's that great balance of it's information gathering for the larger plot, but it's also creating more stakes and investment for us as the viewers in these characters.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's like an interesting tension too, in that we want her to keep digging because she's doing great work and she's gathering all this information
Mm-hmm.
and covering this shady, organization. But then we also know that by doing that, she's putting herself more and more in danger. So like she is more of a threat to the shadowy organization, and they have more and more motivation to take her out, or she's kind of like descending into the madness of this whole operation, and she's putting herself in danger. So that like inherent tension for like we want to care for and protect this character and be like, just don't, no more, you're putting yourself in danger, but then also we're like, yes, you go girl, like uncover more. That is really fun because we feel, or I feel conflicted about, like every time she makes progress I'm like so excited because she's doing some great research work, but then the other part of me is like, oh no, you're just making yourself more of a threat, and you're descending into more and more dangerous territory. So that tension that I feel watching her, I think is also really fun as far as like storytelling and excitement and thrill as well.
Oh yeah, we are absolutely rooting for her, but we want her to be safe. So yeah, I totally get that tension that we feel, um, and knowing that I think it's also interesting to think about if Michael had told her, would she
Mm-hmm.
continue in this
Yep.
unsafe, path, or would she choose something different? So I think that's also just something to think about too, because clearly she cares for people and she wants to help people, and this is a serious injustice that is happening. And so I could see her, even with this information,
Yep.
continuing on this path, but we don't know because Michael still hasn't told her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think at this point, she's in so far and uncovered
Oh
so
yeah.
much that she would still keep going. But it's cool because when we first see her uncover a lot of this, uh, she wants to just drop it. Like she tells Michael, just like, don't, just, you don't have powers. Like, don't keep looking into it. Like, you're just, it's unsafe. And so the Dion from episode one might have been so afraid and might have dropped it, but the Dion now is so invested and passionate and seeing the larger injustice here that she I feel like she would just keep going. And I think that's really fun too, to see that growth and change and transformation in Dion as a character, um, is to see her heart become invested in this, and she will not relent. And it's great because she's inherently looking to help people and care for this family, care for her fiance. Like she's so hooked in on that it's just a transformation from what we saw in the beginning, where she's like, ew, what is this? Get away, let's run away, let's pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that she knows that it's real and that it's happening, she's like, okay, let's get to the bottom of it. And something that I'm curious to see is, will she put together the sickle cell piece of it? Because she even says when she's on the phone with Michael after his mom's episode, she says something to the effect of like, your mom hasn't had a crisis in ages. And I wonder if there are like these things like rumbling around in her brain of, okay, Michael's mom has sickle cell, he doesn't, and he has these powers. Same thing with Jasmine and her dad. And I wonder if she's going to put that together, and that might be another piece to potentially put her in more danger. Maybe she is going to be the one who starts to define what this shadowy organization is and what they're doing, because she's the one in the best position to do that. She has the most outside information to define this organization. So I'm just curious, how is she going to put those pieces together, and how complete will her picture be?
And then when will that information get passed to the rest of the crew too, which is a fun
Yeah.
tension point of like, okay, now when will we put all of our puzzle pieces together, because they each have partial views of everything. So I think that'll be really fun to see. And I don't know, I feel like the show has been so smart to leave us with some of these questions every episode that I wouldn't be surprised if like we get a satisfying episode 6 finale, but not everything is all, come to the surface and we have a full picture. Like I wouldn't put it past the show to like leave those some of those things like still kind of question marks for us, you know, because I think that's ironically like more satisfying than like a full like everything gets resolved ending. And I think the show seems to understand that aspect of us as viewers, that like we kind of like want to keep talking about and guessing and wondering. So I'm intrigued to see how many of these plot lines get resolved and how many are left still open and unknown. Like I think because there's a limited runway, I don't know if we'll get like all of the details and understand who this shadowy organization is. They might still be quite shadowy indeed, you know, and I think that is going to be like some really interesting storytelling choices that the show prioritizes to reveal some things and reveal and not reveal others.
No, that's a really good point. And this show has been so intentional to make it about these people and their loved ones and their communities. Like, it's not about the evil organization, even though
Mm-hmm.
their evil is clearly felt. It is about these people. So I could definitely see this show doing that in the finale, just because that would be in line with what we've seen for the past 5 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you're so right that like it doesn't. It's like it doesn't matter. So it's just taking up space. And when there is only a limited runway, limited time, 50 theoretically, we have like 50 minutes to an hour, right, of so far all of the episodes. Where will we choose to spend our time to reveal what? um, I think that'll be fascinating to see. I always love seeing how a show chooses to end a season. I think there's just like
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
many choices that can be made that it's really fascinating to see like where do they choose to land the plane, and like how much do we get and how much do we not get. I always love season finales because I think there's so much to talk about on where they chose to end this chapter of the story.
Yes. And so far they've managed to pack so much
I
into each
know.
one of these episodes. And so I'm very excited to see what they're able to do with episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out.
Yes. Yeah. There's all these like little world building things that we get more of, you know, like it was cool in this episode, for example, to learn more about what these hooded figures can do and some of the powers, special powers that they have. Like I thought it was so neat that um the hooded figure that Taser was fighting had the like night vision, and essentially like the ability to see through the invisibility, and like it was such a direct pairing with Taser's superpower of invisibility that the hooded figure had essentially the counter to it. And so I think that's kind of cool. It's like how might the hooded figures help enable some of our protagonists, our superheroes, with these like new capabilities potentially? Because going back to our previous theory, sorry, I'm circling back to this because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, we see that clearly, eventually, the 3 months into the future, uh, Rodney has the ability to use and throw electricity around, right? Like that's one of the capabilities that Michael sees that he
Mhm.
has, but we haven't seen him do that yet, have we?
No, we haven't.
He
And
just
and
has
I think
super speed.
he even says it in some conversation, like, "Oh yeah, no, I can't do that."
Yeah, I can't do that yet. So I'm like, like it would be so neat to see some of the translation of these like extra powers that the hooded figures have to the superheroes, because imagine Taser's ability to have invisibility but also to be able to see clearly in his environment with like special vision. That's like a great pairing. Similarly with Rodney, there's evidence that he can do more but he hasn't uncovered yet, and then this hooded figure can do that power. So I'm like, this would be like, will they learn them from the hooded figures? I think will be fascinating. But I love seeing these, like, again, the world is expanding because we're seeing the powers more specifically of what these hooded figures can do that we didn't get to see that before, or we did but in very 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 small doses. And I thought the one with Taser's hooded figure that he's fighting up against, this like night vision thing, really neat.
Yeah, that's so cool. And yeah, we haven't seen much of the hooded figures. You know, we just saw them in that first episode show up, and then future Michael was like, yeah, we got to fight these dudes. That was kind of it. So
Hmm.
we don't know, and I'm very curious to see what shakes out with them. I think the other thing that I'm finding really interesting is the the timing of this season, because conventional wisdom would say, okay, we start in the present and then we jump forward 3 months to the future, setting all the stakes. All right. So then for the next remaining episodes, we see the period between the present and 3 months from now.
Yeah.
And we're progressing steadily in time, and the characters are having progress and setbacks along the way, but we're moving in time. And then the last episode, or even the last two episodes, would take place 3 months from now. And this show, in keeping with its brand, is not doing that. And we are pretty much still stuck in the present. And I mean, it's been a few days, but we have not leaped forward in time at all. So our characters, our heroes, they've learned some of their powers, but they are not nearly as strong as we saw them in the future, 3 months from now. And I think that that's a very interesting choice, because I would imagine that the next episode is still closer to the present in the timeline rather than 3 months from now. So, just again, kicking conventional wisdom and going in a different direction. And it makes me really curious how this is going to end, because it's not going to end at that showdown that Michael saw in the future. And I think it goes back to, I think it was the previous episode where Spud was talking about the butterfly effect and how their choices in the present may have changed the future. And I wonder if some of that is what we're going to see in the next episode, that because they learned things in maybe a different order, then maybe the timeline escalates or the timeline changes, and we'll see something that's a little different than we expected.
That's a fabulous point. Like maybe that future state doesn't even end up happening, you know? Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
maybe that was the thing that, you know, future Michael needed to go back and change things that we never even end up in that state. So like that doesn't ever come to fruition. It's maybe the inciting incident for uh, the whole journey that this show has gone on. But uh, you're right, because we're not going to cover 3 months time within one episode.
Yeah.
So now what? I have no idea actually what they're going to do. If they even bring back that little bit from earlier, like, do we jump into the future? Do we not? Do we just, maybe that's, it doesn't matter. Maybe it really doesn't matter. And we're just going to see them over the course of maybe a few more days, time period in episode 6, and then we're done. And we just have to, you know, like wonder what happens, or I don't know, but it is a fascinating, like, position that the show has written themselves into, that I'm curious how they're gonna address it. Not a clue.
Right. And I think that's what's so exciting, is that we have all of these open-ended questions. We have some maybe bonkers theories of what could happen, but like, we don't know where this is going to go, because it keeps doing the opposite of what we expect, and that's what makes this so exciting. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fun to be excited by a show, and to be surprised
Yeah.
by a show, and that's exactly what this is doing.
Yes, I totally agree. I feel like oftentimes when I'm watching a show, you know, we have a bunch of, we can kind of chart out what we think will happen. And then maybe there's some twists of like, nope, just kidding. But with this show, I really am like, it could go a million directions. And that's really fun. You know, like there isn't even like a theory that I have on like where this could go. It truly is so open. The landscape of possibilities is wide open. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the show could go in 10 million different directions. And I have not a clue which direction it will go in. that's really fun. A lot of times you kind of have an inkling of where a show's going to go, and then of course there's some fake outs where they don't do that. But like at every point you have a trajectory that you're charting out. Um, this one, I really am like no idea where they're going to take it, and the wide open landscape of possibility is really exciting.
And I think, especially for a show that's focused on superheroes, that makes it even more exciting. You know,
Mm,
we're so used to the formula of the good guy saves the day. And of course, there's, the dark night of the soul and like that whole bit, and they will have setbacks and losses and all of that. Like that's part of it. But in the superhero genre, the good guys prevail over evil, and that's just kind of a staple of the genre. We don't know what's going to happen in this. You have five powered people and Dion with her incredible research up against this vague, ambiguous bureaucracy of evil and shadowiness. And that seems kind of impossible. So I also wonder if this is going to end not in a victory or a triumph, but it might end in a tragedy, because this show throughout has not been afraid to tell the truth. And I wonder if there's going to be some tragedies here, and we're going to see,
mm,
I don't know how difficult it can be to take down whiteness, really. Like take down the systemic structures that are racist and evil and awful. And I wonder if that's a direction that this could be going into. Because again, the show likes to zag instead of zigging, and we might not have a clear-cut victory in this like we often have in superhero shows or movies.
that's so good. Yeah. No, I think that's a really great point in that maybe that's why it's predictable, you know? It's like, okay, well, eventually we're going to win. It's just like how it's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And this one, you're right. It's the show is unafraid, and the show is fearless and bold, and is about much more than just good guys triumphing over bad guys. It's really about revealing these parts of our systems, our policies, our society that are oppressive. And so there might be a very mixed ending, like you mentioned, or a total tragic ending, where we won some, but we lost a lot too, as a result of the power and influence of the shadowy organization run by white men, old white men. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that point you made is really, really great, because if we think back to how the show started, it hits us right in the face. You know what I mean? Like right in the gut. And it was fearless in saying, we're going to go on a journey, and buckle in your seatbelts. And we are bold and unafraid to tell the truth. And so it would make sense for the show to, bookend the ending with as explosive of an ending, and as, open your eyes moments of an ending that we got at the beginning. Because that's where if I think back to, like, that's where the show started, is with this fearless, unafraid truth about the systems and the people that are being lost to these systems and policies in place. So you're right. We might not get this triumphant, like, our five superheroes teamed up together and then they took down the
Mm-hmm.
evil organization. Yeah, we really might not get
Yeah.
that, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't know. Emotionally, I'm not ready for it, because we love all of these heroes, and we're rooting for them, not just because they're superheroes, but because of who they are as people. And we are invested in them and their stories and their communities and the people that they love. And so I'm like, oh no. I hope that this show doesn't end in a tragedy, because I'm not ready for that. I'm too invested in them. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And either way, no matter what happens, we know that it's going to be very well done and very well written. Like, this show is just so intentional. It's so smart, it's so strategic. So I'm curious to see, like you were saying, a season finale is so interesting and says so much. And I'm nervous, but I'm also itching to see what this season finale or show finale, because season 2 hasn't been announced yet, what this next episode says about the show and its thesis and our world as a whole.
Yeah, and like what the like layered meanings and purpose of some of those plot points will be, I think is going to be really fascinating because even in this one episode, in episode 5, we see the show reveal so much about these dynamics that are at play in our real world, but through the plot points of the show. You know, there's that whole conversation that Rodney has with his mom about his stepfather, I would suppose, Greg. uh, Rodney's mom says, you know how Greg feels. And Rodney's like, yeah, you mean he's racist? Like, why did he choose Rachel and
Yeah.
not me? And so you see the way that that has created so much anger and pain and shame in him when he goes back to his apartment. And there's just this like bigness of emotion that he feels as a result of that. You see some of the domestic violence stuff with Char's whole storyline with Crazy and like her time and time again feeling like she is not in charge of her body and it is just able to be taken by the men in her life. And then you see Taser's crew getting pulled over and the way that that unfolds with how the police treat them. And so like even in this one episode, it is tackling so much and revealing so much truth about our society and weaving it so seamlessly into the storylines. But also, when you think more about it, you're like, but that is a mirror for everything else that we've seen in our real world as well. I love how intentional the show is about doing that time and time again, episode after episode. And I'm sure the way that this ending for this season will unfold will also do the same. They're all that layered, intentional revealing of these larger dynamics at play in our real world getting woven into this story.
And another piece in this episode that really caught my eye is the importance of having Black healthcare providers.
Mm.
When you see Michael's mom in the sickle cell center, I think all of her nurses were white. I could be wrong, but like that's what I thought that I saw in that scene, and I didn't go back and rewind it. I should have to confirm, but that just got me thinking, if Michael's mom is in this sickle cell center and most of the people treating her are white, people who maybe have never grappled with this disease, maybe they don't know anybody except for their patients who have grappled with this. Obviously, they're trained medical professionals, and that's great, but I think that there might be something here that the show is trying to point out, the importance of Black healthcare providers, and especially how Black women are treated by the healthcare industry, and how important it is to listen to Black people. Because even when Michael is pressing like the call button, he has to press it so many times before they
Mm-hmm.
finally come to her and help her. And that's just in lines with reports of Black women not being believed by doctors and all of that. So I, to
Mm-hmm.
your point, I love that this show is sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly, weaving in these larger themes that we can take and think about and take a really sober self-assessment at our society and identify some ways that we can make it better for everyone, work
Mm-hmm.
better for everyone, not just one select group of people.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And it's paired interestingly with Sabrina's storyline as a nurse and her
Yeah.
finally getting that promotion, and it, we've seen the way that she has been treated by some of her patients that were white. I think it was in episode like 2 or 3. Um, but she's looking for this man's vein to do the blood work and she can't find
Mm-hmm.
it, which is a very normal thing. It's a challenge. Sometimes people have veins that are just, shy, and and he yells at her and he says like, why did you assign someone so incompetent for me to me, blah 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 blah. So you see the way that she has had to deal with these dynamics in her work. But I also love that the show, like, has mentioned in the past that she's been waiting for this promotion, and we see that these two white people recognize and see her efforts. And so I love that the show is balanced in that way. Like, it's, yes, scathing and revealing about these hard truths, but it's also not like doing it in a way that just makes it feel hopeless. Like, there are these moments where we should celebrate the people that see our characters, see their effort, and are rewarding them for it. Granted, it sounds like it was a little bit late and delayed for her promo. Like, she's been waiting for it for a long time. But it's not all bad. There's a lot that's bad, and we should talk about them. But it's also not all bad. I love that there's that balance, that the show is also towing a great line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved that for her. I was like, yes, you go, Sabrina, you get that promotion. And I also thought that was just so smart narratively, because we've seen her journey this season of wanting that, and then she gets it, and the one person that she wants to share that with,
oh yeah,
is missing, and we don't know what happened to her. And then Sabrina having to go and look for her. So I love that it was this moment of like, hi, yes, we did it, we achieved a goal. And then immediately that causes us to go into kind of frantic mode with Sabrina, and just adding more tension, adding more stakes, adding more questions, and really like fear for not only Shar, who we've come to know and love, but also Sabrina, as she is desperately searching for her sister. And this episode, in many ways, is our heroes isolated from their communities. Shar
yeah,
is missing,
yeah.
Spud is in the hospital, Andre has isolated from his son, Michael has isolated from Dion. Like, they are all separate for whatever reason. And so then it is a logical step for them to want to come together in some way, because they all recognize that need for community. And Rodney comes out and even says it, like, Spud is his whole community, and he goes to his mom's house to ask if he could stay there until Spud is
Mm-hmm.
okay, because he can't be alone right now. And so I think that that's such a smart way to write this episode, to see them all isolated, so then when they do come together, it makes sense. It wasn't this, like, altruistic reason of let's go save the world, but it was this very real need for, I need community, I need belonging, and I need somebody who will understand me and like stand with me. And they seem to be able to provide that for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, it feels so earned because we've seen them
Yes.
collide, try and come together, but they've got their competing things. And so only when they are truly come to the end of the road of what their options are, it feels inevitable. They now have no other choice but to try and do this together. And I think they're also, we've spent enough time for them to begin to realize what the real threat is. Like, Michael at the beginning was like, hey, there's these things, they're going to come after us. And they're all like, yeah, okay, that's cool, maybe. But I got my other personal things that I got to go deal with right now. And I think also Andre potentially like disappearing and them realizing the real risk now and the real danger that they're in, they really can turn to each other and work together now. But we really earned it because we've seen so many times, so many almost of them maybe coming together, but like, nope, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. And so when that shot of them showing up together to help
Mm-hmm.
her, oh, it was so satisfying and such a thrill because we've really earned this moment.
Also, how did they know where Taser was?
I have no idea.
Okay, great. I was like, did
I
I
had the same
miss
question.
something?
No, I had
Because
the same
I
question.
I this doesn't make sense to me.
Did Rodney
Okay,
like
good.
run around the entire town?
Well, and so I was like, okay,
I don't
between
know.
him and Michael, because like Michael can like poof in and out of places. So like, did they just go like, okay, you take these blocks and I'll take these blocks, and then they find him, and then they come together and transport everybody at once? Like, what? What are we doing?
Not a clue. I had that same
Not a
question though. I was
clue.
like, oh, you found him so fast. That's really
Right?
convenient.
Yeah. I maybe they'll answer that in the next episode, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they won't.
Yep. We shall see. Okay, other big things that we want to mention before we give out some awards. It's crazy how much there is to talk
There's
about.
so much in this, but I had a silly thought that I would like to share with you. Um,
Okay.
there is a moment when Crazy is talking to Taser, and he basically said, "You came at the king and you missed." And I went, "Did Crazy watch The Wire too?" Like, I'm
Oh, I
sure that
love that
that's in
moment.
like additional popular culture, but I'm really just enjoying the idea of Crazy after a long day, going about his business. Then he just like plops on the couch and puts on season 1 of The Wire. I love
Yep.
that. So
Yep.
I've made that my own headcanon because it's fun.
I love it too. I thought I like grinned ear to ear when he says that to Taser on the phone. Um, and yeah, maybe Craze has got, some posters of Avon Barksdale, his inspiration for who
Mm-hmm.
he wants to be. Because he is
Yeah,
so
could be.
charismatic, and he's got that same energy that I am the alpha, and like I will like roll through town because I own the place. It's very Avon-esque.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I'm here for it. It's great.
Well, I also wonder if like Taser has seen it too and like understood the reference as well. There's just so many fun things to think about with that one line.
Yeah. So I love it. I like that idea. Maybe that's part of like, because Craze was Taser's mentor, for lack of a better term. So like
Mhm.
maybe that's part of the process, is like, I'm training you into how to be like me. And you know,
This
Craze
is the
101 is
this
watching
is
The
the yeah
Wire. It's
required
part of the
viewing material.
syllabus. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, honestly, there's so many life lessons in The Wire. It's a
Hmm.
valuable viewing. I get it.
Hmm. Yes, indeed. Okay,
It really is.
let's give out some awards, shall we? The first category is for the SVP of this episode, the super valuable player. Who is your choice?
I want to give this to John, who is Andre's friend, for not claiming to know an Andre when two random strangers approach him on the street. Like, honestly, that's a good friend. Keep him around.
Yeah, who? I don't know an Andre. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know an Andre. Nah, never heard of him. Can I go? It's great.
Oh, it's so good. I'm giving this award to Rodney for really spearheading bringing this crew together. I love that. I kind of love
Yes.
that it wasn't who we expected it would be. Like he's like the youngest of the group. He's been this like bumbling figure for most of the previous episodes, just doing his own thing, good natured. But we really see him be the centrifugal force, the gravity for this group coming together. And it wasn't Michael. And we thought it was going to be Michael. So I love that it's Rodney, the youngest one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun. And he just has that thing about him where he can bring people together, and I
Mhm.
love that. Some people have that inherently in them, and we're seeing that skill go to work in this episode.
Yes, indeed. Okay, the next category is achievement in intensity. What moment is going to receive this award for this episode?
I want to give it to when Shar leaves the house in her robe with a knife. Like, the stress that I felt in my body when that woman brings that big old knife out, I was like, oh no, this is
Yep.
not going to end well. I was so stressed. Oh, I'm
Yep.
still stressed.
Yeah, because we don't know what happened, and she is
Exactly.
missing. And
Yeah.
Craze is also missing too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
because he hasn't shown up to his mom's house, and we know from Taser that he goes every day. So then you're like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, what happened to both of them?
Right?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
find out in the next episode, hopefully.
I
That was
hope.
one of my candidates, so I'm gonna choose my second one,
Nice.
which is Rodney interrogating John. Okay,
Oh,
he has
yes.
been this like fun, lighthearted, like he's like got this lightness in the vibe that he shows up with in the world, which is really fun and really sweet. But he's got this like intense, bold side to him too, where I'm like, okay, Rodney, you do your thing. Like he I just didn't unexpected intensity from Rodney is what I'm giving this to.
No, it's great. And because, like, when you meet him, he's just like your
It's just
friendly neighborhood drug dealer, you know, like,
yeah,
no big deal. He's just chilling, having
cracking
fun. He's just this, like,
jokes. Yeah.
yeah, he's having a great time. And then you see in this moment, like, oh, there is an intense side of him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Yeah, no, that's a
Yep.
great pick.
Yeah. It's just fun to see more from that character and like the depths and layers to him too. That's just kind of unexpected. Uh okay. The next category is the Spitting Fire Award. What is going to get this award this week?
I want to give this to Sabrina when she's talking with Michael and he tells her about Andre, and she just says, "Who's us?" And I went, "Yes, because you're not part of a team. You don't have any loyalty to each other. Us doesn't include you." So I loved
Uh,
that moment.
that was great. That was really great. She is so fascinating because similar to Rodney, like she is so like quiet and reserved and grounded in so many ways, and yet she's got this sassy side that I love seeing when it comes out. It's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am giving this award to when Dion says to Michael, "You barked an order at me and expected me to sit like I'm some kind of dog." And I
Yeah.
died at that. I was like, that is so good. So good.
That was my other pick. So
I love it.
I'm glad that that you picked that one. That line is incredible. And
Yeah.
what the other thing that I love about the way that Dion communicates is she is so clear and she is
Yes.
precise in her language. And I she lets you know how she's feeling. She lets you know her boundaries. She lets you know, hey, you have done something that is not okay. And I expect you to resolve that in some way. And there's no like even when they're arguing and she's like really hurt, I expected honestly some like ultimatums to be thrown out of like if you leave then like don't bother coming back or like I'm not going to be here because that's normally what we would expect for some of these interactions to be these like really explosive like drama stakes, and she is so level-headed about it and intentional in her words, and she makes sure even in a heated moment to not like inflict additional harm or like create opportunities for more disunity. I love the way that she communicates and I love
Yes.
how that's shown in this show. Like she's great.
She is like the textbook perfect conflict management
Oh my
approach,
gosh,
you know? Like
yes.
I aspire to be that because you're right. She doesn't play dirty and she doesn't fuel the fire and fan the flames of anger and pain. But she's also not shying away from communicating clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. She's so healthy and she's a freaking catch. And Michael needs to do better because honestly, he's
Right?
flailing right now.
Yeah.
He's flailing. And I'm just like, so many times, and I know this is like the whole point of, creating conflict of the story. There's so many times where I'm like, Michael, just like communicate a little bit more clearly because you are being so vague right now and it is creating so much confusion and you have got such a catch. So don't fumble this, okay? Like he I think the contrast between the two of them and how they communicate is also just like notable too because like you mentioned she is so healthy. aspire to be like
Mhm.
that.
Right? I'm
I am
like, oh
not
my
like that.
gosh, Dion,
No.
teach all of us your ways because we can all learn from you. She's incredible.
And there's so much care too. Like even when she's
Yes.
angry,
Yeah.
she has made it clear it's because she cares and she wants this to work, but also you've done wrong and you've hurt her, but she's here. She's fighting for, like, it's just, it's so good. It's
We
very
all want to
healthy.
be like Dion.
We really do. Oh, all right. Looking ahead, what are you excited to see in this finale?
I mean, what in the world is going to happen? We don't know. So
Yeah,
man, I'm just
so excited.
excited to see where we go because I'm not sure where we're going.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to see some superhero fighting in some regard. Hopefully, we'll see more of Dion just being a great researcher and just all around great person. And I really, I want to find out what happened to Shar, and I want her to be okay. I'm not going to be okay if she is not okay.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not looking
there,
good.
right? Like, there's so many characters that I feel for, and like Andre being taken, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Oh
like
my
if something
gosh.
happens to him, I'm also not going to be okay. So just, I'm so invested in these characters and very nervous for this next episode
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, man. Some things are not looking good for our heroes. We'll, we'll
Yeah.
see what the show
Yeah.
does.
Uh-huh. I know. I am we are intrigued, excited. We have a million and one questions, but also holding our breath for what's
Yeah.
going to unfold. I think I've forgotten how intense the opening of the show is. Because like there's a lot of really like great intense things that happen, but like we start out with such a banger that I'm like, I could see them saving a lot of that for this big explosive finale. So yeah, I think we're in for an exciting ride with these characters. There's just so many questions. What happened to Shar? What's going to happen to Taser when this crew shows up? I also think it's one. I've been invested in Taser's arc in general, but I think it's so smart for the show to have written him to be in danger, and then this crew shows up for him to save him and to protect him, and that being the thing that will get him to invest in this crew now versus
Mm-hmm.
like him being one of the ones that they're like talking to and visiting and then let's go save people. Like no, the show understands that this moment is what will get Taser to invest because one, also he's separated from his crew as well. So actually your point earlier around them being isolated from the communities is so good because I think theoretically his crew's gotten taken in by the police. So now he really is alone and he is now most ripe to invest and choose to be with this team now. So I'm just intrigued to see what happens with his whole narrative arc. I mean, every single one of them. What's going to happen? Is Dion going to be in trouble and in danger? If so, what's that going to look like? I think the other thing is we're also now invested in Jasmine, like a whole other
Oh yeah,
character for us to care about. Her,
yeah.
what happens to her, and does she get rescued? Does she not? Blah blah blah. Um, so yeah, I just rattled off a million and one things, but that is
Uh-huh.
but the brink of our list. And I think, like we mentioned
Right?
earlier, what's so fun is that this can go so many different directions. So I have no idea. So that'll be fun to see. It's like, what do they even do with this landscape of possibilities?
Yeah. Yep. There is a huge long list of outstanding things, and I I think what's also exciting is that we have this giant list of things, and this show has built up so much trust over the last 5 episodes that we're like, okay, yeah, we have a mountain of questions, but I trust the show to resolve them well. Even if I'm heartbroken at the end, I still trust this show because the writing has been so good to come to a satisfying conclusion, even with a mountain of questions. So I think that makes me even more excited while also being nervous. I'm just a bundle of emotions with a mountain of questions. So we're going to see what happens.
I love that visual. I'm just a bundle of emotion with a
Yes.
mountain of questions. That is so accurate. Well said. Let's end our episode here. That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to beat that. So let's end on a high.
Here we are, just 2 bundles of emotions and 2 mountains of questions. So good. Okay, well, this was our review and discussion of episode 5 of Supacell. You can find it available on Netflix. And man, if you couldn't tell, we can't recommend the show enough. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through Supacell. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review letting us know your thoughts about episode 5. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at TBNSPod, or email us at tbnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon to discuss the season finale of Supacell. We can't wait. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll definitely be talking again real soon.